We all quote out a lot of jobs that we don't end up getting. And on the flip side, we all get a lot of quotes for things that may not end up going anywhere, whether that's machinery, equipment, material, or subcontracting. Now, when you don't give the companies that PO because they didn't win the bid, do you follow up and tell them? What's up, guys? Ian Sandusky from Lakewood Machine and Tool back here again for Practical Machinist. And today on Machine Shop Talk, we're going to be diving into exactly that question. But before we do, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on notifications below to make sure you never miss a video. Let's get into it. So as promised, today we are going to jump back into the Practical Machinist forums to answer a poster who came there with a question. As a slight aside, I know I've said it before, but it's always worth making sure you guys know this. The Practical Machinist forums are one of the absolute best resources out there if you have a question or a topic you'd like to discuss. Whether it's a technical question that you just want a real quick answer on, whether my machine's not working, I'm trying to troubleshoot it, you're looking for feeds and speeds for material, or you have some longer form questions trying to get a discussion and get some opinions like this one, whether it's about running a shop, how to deal with hiring, instances like this. It's a really fantastic resource, not just to go read, but to actually ask questions, because there are some very, very knowledgeable folks on there that can help give you some opinions. It's like crowdsourcing information for your company or for your job or your career in real time. So I highly recommend going and checking it out. So back to the topic at hand, this was on the shop management and ownership subforum, one of my favorites because I feel like it has some really good discussions. But this guy came on and had a question. He's a guy who owns or runs a shop. I didn't really get which he was. But as a shop owner or manager, he sends out a lot of RFQs or requests for quotes. So, maybe he's trying to get pricing on material, or maybe he's trying to get pricing on getting some work subcontracted out, or maybe he's getting pricing on new machines. He sends out quite a few RFQs, as most of us do. If you run a shop or you're kind of involved in the back end of a shop, you know that a big part of your job, if you're in that department, or whether you are that department, if you're a small shop, you may be that whole department as well as 5 other departments. But you send out a lot of requests for quote. Typically, if you have the energy and time to do so, when you're trying to get pricing on material, all these things, it's always worth sending out a request for quote to multiple vendors. If you go to one place all the time and you're only getting pricing for them, you could be missing out on better pricing or lead time or service elsewhere. So if you have the time, you have the energy, it is always worth sending out multiple RFQs for the same job. For certain companies that I do work for, especially some of the bigger corporations, they have a policy at their company that they cannot send out a PO unless they go get 3 quotes for every job. It sounds like a lot, but the reason that these companies have these policies is it basically keeps everybody on their toes. If one company is always getting all the work and all the RFQs and no one else is even quoting, that company has no incentive to actually have competitive pricing. So it makes sense. It can be very frustrating to deal with on the company that's, quoting out the work, but I understand why that exists. And as a, machine shop, you should also try to have this mentality. For example, let's talk about material for a second. Let's say I want to go and get some 304 stainless. We do quite a bit of 304 stainless here. Now, I have multiple material vendors. So if I go send out a quote and I go to we have one material vendor that's a big material vendor, huge. I think they're the biggest in Canada. They're huge in the States too, I know that. I know they're multinational. But in any case, I know if I go send them an RFQ for 304 stainless, I know that I'm probably gonna get the best price on it, but I'm gonna need to buy 12 or 20 footers, depending on what that full length comes in. They don't do partial lengths really. And because since they're a big multinational, although they are generally always going to be able to get it for me, I may need to wait 2, 4, 6 weeks because they may need to bring it up from the States. I'm here in Canada, they may need to bring it up from the States, or they may have a shipment coming in from Germany to the States that needs to go wherever. Huge company. I'm gonna be able to get it, I'm probably gonna have a really good price, but lead time might not be as good, and I need to buy full lengths. So if I want to buy 304 and I want a short length or I need it yesterday, I know I have company B that I can go to and say, hey guys, can you quote this out for me? They sell partial lengths. I can buy 2 feet of something that I need yesterday. But the contrast to that is my pricing is probably not going to be as good. It can be much more expensive, but I can get what I need and I can get it quickly. And if something's much more expensive here, it may still be far cheaper than buying a full length if it's some kind of weird size that I'm never going to use again. Remember, material on the shelf doesn't earn interest like money in a bank account. You don't want to keep excess amounts of material that you're never going to use again for no reason. So because of this, it's always worth sending out multiple quotes, because even though company A, the big company, or company B, and I have other mid-range companies, I may want to get that same job quoted out in multiple places, because even though, let's say this company does really well on aluminum, company B may surprise me. Maybe they have stock there that, for some reason somebody ordered and never picked up. That kind of scenario happens. Or maybe company C over here, they actually have a brand new shipment coming in. They can sell me a partial length, full length, whatever it is. You always want to, even though I kind of know what's going to be the best price, if you have the time, it's always worth checking, because companies may surprise you. And then big company or small company doesn't know that if you need this, they're the only game in town. Because if somebody knows they're the only game in town, they can do whatever they want. And we like to think people are rational, nice people, but money makes people weird. We've said this before. In my opinion, you do need to be a little careful with using companies only for quotes. This is kind of part of this conversation, in that if you are always going and getting your 3 quotes and you're only ever ordering from one company, it's not a great scenario to be in. I mean, you shouldn't give people work that they're overquoting on or that their lead times are no good. But if you're always getting 3 quotes and you're only ordering from the one company, the other 2 companies aren't going to be as responsive. They know that you're just using them as a pricing exercise. I think anybody who's done quoting before, you've been used as a pricing exercise by a company multiple times before, and you know it, and you know how that feels. You just kind of roll your eyes when you see the quotes come in. I have one company that sends a lot of RFQs to me over the years. We've done work for them, but I know that if I quote out 10 items, I'm maybe getting 2. And the next RFQ is gonna have those same 10 items on it, and maybe I'll get the same 2 and maybe 1 more. When you're basically just being used as a pricing exercise. So if you're using other companies simply as a pricing exercise, be prepared that they're probably not going to be as eager to give you the best pricing that they possibly can. They're probably not going to spend a ton of time working on your quote, so be ready for what that entails. They're not going to chase down the best price out there possible on your material, or they're not going to move heaven and earth if it's a subcontracting job to get overtime guys in to run your work because you haven't done anything for them. And that makes sense. That's just business. So be a little careful of that, but it's just something to keep in mind. So to get back to this guy's question, essentially they were asking, you go get your 3 quotes, now that we've kind of gone over what that means. They were asking, do you go and tell those other 2 companies that didn't get the work that they didn't get the work? Interesting question. The responses on the forum were awesome. I love them. I love going through questions like this because you can get a lot of different responses. They were generally in the same camp that I was, and that was, no, you don't go out of your way to tell people that they didn't get the work. And this sounds off the bat, if you're not familiar with this sounds rude. It sounds exploitive a little bit, but it's just not really the way business is done. The one exception to this would be if someone calls to follow up, but especially manufacturing, in a lot of industries, it's not just us, it's business. Typically, no response means no. Companies know that. I don't get offended if I quote out work for a company unless, I'm trying to figure out my timelines or whatever, or they make it sound like it's a sure thing and then they don't come around and order it. I quote out work. If I don't hear back, I assume it's a no, and I don't get offended about it. It's the way it goes. If I get material quoted out from 3 guys, they generally know I'm getting material quoted out elsewhere, so they know that, when you get machines quoted out, I am pretty straightforward with people and say, we're looking at pricing. I don't call them and say, hey, listen, we decided to go in a different direction. It's just the way business goes. It sounds rude, but it's not. As I mentioned, the one exception to this is if the salesman or manager or whoever it is calls or emails and says, hey, just wanted to touch base on that quote. did we end up getting it? Maybe they have to order material, or maybe they want to start building the machine or whatever it is. And in that case, I do think it is respectful to let them know. I think it's more disrespectful personally to lead them on and say, oh, you know what, we're still thinking about it. If you're still genuinely thinking about it, that's one thing. But if you turn around and say, oh, we're still thinking about it, we might order, and you already have the material for the job on the floor, it just doesn't make any sense. So I think it's respectful to tell them, hey, listen, no, we ended up going in a different direction. The follow-up to that question that was in this forum question was, if you do tell them that they didn't get the work, do you tell them why? And again, I generally don't tell companies they didn't get the work, so I don't email the guy and say, thank you for your quote, I'm actually going with company B because they were cheaper, or you were too long on timeline. Certain companies I'll do this with if I have a close working relationship with them, but generally, unless they call to follow up or email to follow up, I'm not going to tell them that. And if they do ask and they say, hey, can I just get a reason why we didn't get that order, I'll probably go as far as to tell them, hey, listen, do you know what? I just got better pricing. You weren't competitive on pricing, or you weren't competitive on timeline. I needed this in 4 weeks. You quoted me 8 weeks. Or, there's a lot of different reasons that can go into that. I try to keep it a little bit vague, but with enough feedback that if it can be helpful, I'll tell them. If their pricing was 20% higher or whatever, I'm not going to tell them you're 20% higher, but I'm just going to say, listen, you were high on this. Because, hey, listen, maybe next time they'll try to come in lower. Or, there's that scenario where maybe their company just has a policy on all their quotes says, 5 to 6 week delivery. But realistically, they could have done 2. But because their company policy says we only quote a 4-week timeline, I went somewhere else. I've had that happen. And then the company said, hey, listen, why didn't we get the job? And said, I need it in 2 weeks. They go, fair enough, we could have gotten to you in 2 weeks, but this is a policy, and that's a whole nother conversation of why they're doing that. I've had it happen multiple times. But that kind of feedback can be helpful, so I will give that. What I will not do, and would never advise you do, is if somebody says, hey, why didn't we get the work? Say, actually, company A, we went with company B because they were 56% cheaper, and they are awesome. I don't think it's helpful. 2 reasons. 1, what if now you need to go to company A for something because company B can't do it? You need to go to company A, you need a favor, you need something rush, or you need, them to do a favor for you somehow. They're probably going to say, oh, we'd love to help, but why don't you go to that lovely company B that you love so much that you've been giving all your work to? People can get petty. It sounds funny. Oh no, everybody's a good businessman. That would never happen. No, it happens all the time. Happens all the time. The other reason why I think that's not helpful, it's a lot like if I go to get a part, I generally don't send out work for subcontracting, but the odd time that I have, I don't tell them, hey, listen, can you quote this part for me? I'm looking to have it done for $35. Because then, what if they were going to quote that part out usually at $12? Now the benchmark's here. They can say, oh, we'll do it for 30. And I'd be happy with that, but I could have got it for 12. You don't want to give companies needless benchmarks, because then they're not trying to give you their best price, they're just trying to beat what you said. You don't want to give them an opportunity to, this kind of comes into the whole, you don't want to give too much information, you want to keep some things back in order to make sure that people are being honest and trying to give you the best deal that they can. So I would advise not doing that. I would say, hey, listen, another company got it. I won't even tell them the other company unless they ask, and even then, maybe not. It's not really anybody's business. That's my opinion on it anyway. Everybody else kind of said the same thing there, and that's just my opinion on this. So long story short, that's how I handle these kind of situations. In any case, I thought this was a very interesting discussion on the forum, so I highly advise you check it out. And I'd like to know in the comments below, do you do this? If you get work quoted out at multiple places, do you tell them if they didn't get the work? If you do you tell them why? I'd love to hear it in the comments below, because it sounded like a pretty straightforward question, but there actually was some debate in there as to what to do. And as with many things, guys, there's a lot of shades of gray. In any case, guys, thank you very much for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on notifications below to make sure you never miss a video. You take care.